and you write. You read more and then you write more. You explore. You sing. You have a great time. You experience. Thinking that one day, just about one day, these things will build the character you admire to live as. You love and you lose. You bleed best you can to the extreme, hoping that just about one day, you will turn this life into a poem that everyone should read about. You learn, you grow, you aspire, inspire, and live like a story that makes you be the best story one ever heard. And if it's true, let's begin this. A story and story much more. Ladies and gentlemen, and each one of you out there, I welcome you to the very special Economic Times Cutting Chai Stories brought to you by ETH. My name is Mithun Upadhyay, delighted to be back here with yet another guest who's got more than just much more. Well, he's someone who's led by an example, loves what he does, and brings in always something new to the table. His thought makes him a great leader. Who is he? Well, currently working as a CIO at Site Care Cancer Hospitals based in Bengaluru, India, signed since the year 2016. He has more than 22 years of work experience in Indian and global life sciences and IT organizations, including Cognizant, Quintiles, iGate, Dabur Pharma, GVK Biosciences, and Sitecare, of course. He has a postgrad in pharmacology from KMC Manipal, an MBA in strategy from MDI Gurgaon. In 2017, he was awarded by the UK Foreign Ministry the most prestigious Chevening Fellowship in the Leadership and Management from University of Oxford. He's currently engaged with a team of passionate professionals who are working towards providing world-class cancer care to Indian patients. Amit wants to leverage technology in overcoming a lot of practical challenges being faced by healthcare institutions, and also is extremely passionate about using healthcare data analytics in his endeavor of reducing healthcare delivery costs for the patients. Amit is also involved in multiple initiatives with NGOs and educational institutions in areas such as the cancer awareness and providing treatment funding support, including seeking funds from CSR initiatives of organizations for such cause. We're very happy and delighted to enlighten us more and all our guests here. We have the Chief Information Officer, CIO, and Head Partnership for Site Care Hospital, the one and the only Mr. Amit Sharma with us right now. Mr. Amit, welcome to Cutting Chai Stories. Before you say anything, I must tell you, we are delighted to have you here because there's so much more that we can understand about life sciences and the healthcare. And today it's going to be all about you, how you drive yourself to become who you are today. So welcome again to Cutting Chai Stories.
Thanks, Mithun. Thanks for the gracious welcome. And I look forward to have a really engagement session with you.
Well, such is the only prospect right now. To make sure things like, I want to just see the background. I see two amazing, pictures behind you. Now, these pictures talk about blossom. Yeah, it talks about the happiness of blossom, the new thing. So what do I understand? What kind of a personality you are, having two similar picture and all for a new life? So your take on it.
Well, it's a sheer coincidence that I'm working in a space which on one hand deals with a very difficult area like cancer, but at the same time working very cohesively with a bunch of professionals who really want to make a difference in the way cancer is treated in India, in Indian landscape. So these kind of painting the entire aura about the hospital, the way the patients are treated, the way patients are handled in the hospital, the entire look and feel of the hospital. it's a very conscious effort. So as you can and you have already made out a point in terms of talking about these paintings. So these are, and you'll be surprised. Probably we have more than 300 paintings in the entire
Wow.
hospital,
Wow.
and it's kind of increasing every year. We are trying to make this space, entire space, much more lively space, including even looking at opportunity of creating a sort of a art gallery within the hospital. I mean, that is something which is a reflective of what we are trying to do in this entire cancer care space, which
Wow.
obviously is also rubbing on to individuals like me. These things, they have definitely an impact on you, that how you start your day, how you interact with people. So definitely it is something which is impacting everyone.
I totally agree with you. If, in fact, just a matter of look to the picture, the painting, you have this very amazing smile that draws into a happiness vibe, and the enzymes of happiness is growing. So it's a very beautiful connect with side care that they're developing among all the people, just not employees, for also the patients as well. With that talk, I'm gonna come back to these questions of the thought of yours to reduce the cost of treatment of cancer that you are very engaged about. But I'm gonna breeze back into your early life, about life that maybe only a few know, and maybe it's now time that we would love to know about your early life. So let's go back to your early life, your schooling, your family back in the days, parents, mom and dad, any siblings, and where were you born?
So I belong to a very small but known town in India. I mean, I belong to a city called Meerut, which is just around 70 kilometers from Delhi. Uh, Many people relate it to the First War of Independence, which
True.
is obviously a proud association. But the other thing which very not many people know is about Meerut is one of the India's largest cantonment area. Fortunately, uh, we used to stay in the cantonment area, and my school, my house, everything was there. Even though we did not belong to the army background, but we were fortunate enough to stay in that area. So that the entire landscape definitely had very nice memories for me, both in terms of schooling and the way I we used to live and we used to enjoy our childhood. In terms of family, a very small family with my parents and a younger brother who is now working as a professional in Canon in Gurgaon. My father was an engineer and he used to work in a private organization. Fortunately, they used to work in the Indian defense sector. I mean, supplying of some of the very niche components to Indian and global organizations in the defense
Wow.
sector at that time. And so about the childhood, I mean, it's very nice memories in of a small, typical middle class family, all challenges, but a very nice neighborhood, I would say. I mean, that would bring all the good memories back to me. I mean, it was like an extended family. I always used to say that living in that part of the world was something like you are staying in a big joint family, even though
True.
you are a nuclear family.
True. I really agree with you. In fact, I've been to the Canteria and Meerut, and I totally connect to what you're saying right now. That is a different experience altogether, a different vibe altogether. A lot, so much of joy and connection. So that has been the early life of yours. But how were you as a child? Were you like a notorious one? Were you like a very studious, or were you like straightforward? You knew what you wanted type. What was it like? And who was the guiding mentor for you among parents?
So surprisingly, I was a mix bag kind of thing. I mean, I was actually tagged as one of the boring kids also. I mean, I was not very into too many of physical activities, but I was notorious sometimes to that
Okay,
extent that people, it was very unpredictable in the way they do. But that's normally kids tend out to be. I mean, when you get into your notorious skin, sometimes you can do some of these things that nobody can expect out there. But
absolutely.
otherwise, uh, I enjoy company, but I was not somebody who used to mingle with a lot of people out there. I mean, that's the trait that probably has developed in the later course of my life. Uh, so I somehow my mother used to call me. a kind of a boring adult who's a kid who's basically grown from a child to an almost like a adult, because I was too much into reading and nothing specific. I mean, I somehow, for some weird reason, when I was very small, from that time, I used to enjoy reading newspapers and then some magazines, and
Wow.
mostly contemporary magazines. Not a very studious student, but yeah, I would categorize myself as above average. Uh, but I had some sort of a specific likes and dislikes about subjects. So, for example, I used to hate maths and physics. So
Okay.
for that reason, engineering was always out of question.
True.
Medicine probably I couldn't do because I was not never able to come up to the terms to the physics part of it.
Right.
But
Right.
I enjoyed the other the subjects, like for example biology, chemistry, and I enjoyed schooling. So that's
Wow.
about that.
That's so wonderful. You know what? I like how you diplomatic you are about the matter of the fact that, I was an average student. That is that is much better than an average student for sure. So I like how you said, maths and physics were out of your syllabus. You kept biology and of course science as a mainstream. And here you are in terms of what you do. So I'm gonna breeze through the next generation altogether in a human life of college days. How was your college days? Where was your college days? About your best friends, about those moments that you recall that it still makes you laugh.
So I mean, when I say college, fortunately I've been to three of India's kind of a good institutions, I would say. I mean, I have graduated in pharmacy, then I post graduated in pharmacology from KMC Manipal, and then I did my MBA from MBI Gurgaon. Especially the last two, they are considered as the amongst top five institutes in their own specific, or 10 institutes in their areas of studies. So obviously, a school or a college, the rankings are reflective of the entire landscape. It's not only the building. So a lot
Absolutely.
has to do with with the professors, and a lot to do with the peers that whom you study with. So
Right.
obviously, I have very good memories of working with some of the brightest, or studying with some of the brightest minds, and most of them are doing tremendously good in their professional life now, because we are talking of some 15-year-old
True.
kind of frame. Um, Graduation I did from Meerut University, and the college was in a small town in Modinagar. But we were one of the first batches in UP who were studying pharmacy at that time, because
Oh,
pharmacy
wow.
comparatively was one of the newest subject at that time. I mean, talking of around 25 years back.
True. True.
So that time only Banaras Hindu University was the only pharmacy college apart from Meerut University where we were studying.
Right.
So a lot of new things were coming our way, including learning about the profession per se. A lot of exploration that what to do next. So a lot of time was spent in terms of deliberating that what we do next.
Right.
But nice time. And then, fortunately, or maybe even by design, I did my two post graduations after taking some sort of a stint in the industry, because there were reasons. Obviously, we typically belong to a mid class family where we knew that okay, we have typical means and resource to do our education, and then we have to pitch in from our own pockets. So I worked, and then I saved some money, and then I went to do the PGs, both the PGs which I did. But it also added a lot in terms of my exposure to the industry, and then I was actually able to understand much more or much better as compared to directly coming into the college time.
Oh,
So
wow.
I think the later stints in the colleges, which were much more practical experience, but at the same time much more enjoyable also, because once you work into the industry and then you go back to the college, you value college even more, because
Right.
you know that this is the best time that you have at your
Right. Right. I totally agree with you, and I like how, based on the fact of where you did your college, you have a bit of more from the days of college days, and the fact of those years altogether. Thank you so much again, Amit. That indeed is very very good for all our audience who's watching us. Now I'm gonna go on, and on a very quick note, I'm gonna ask you about your professional life. Okay. So career-wise, which was your first job?
So as I mentioned to you, immediately after graduation, I opted to work in a pharmaceutical manufacturing organization. And
Okay.
again, it was surprising. Maybe I had always been somebody who's kind of not amongst the general people who decide in one way. I don't know, by design or probably by nature. I decided to go into the manufacturing part of the pharmaceutical organization. And probably I was only one or two amongst the 60 people who decided to be in that domain. Otherwise, most of the
Wow.
people either they decided to go into higher studies or into the marketing or the sales of the business. So I started my career in a pharmaceutical organization in Ghaziabad and worked for about 2 years in the pharmaceutical manufacturing industry. I was always fascinated by plants, machineries, and always wanted to work since the days of my graduation day when we used to visit some of the factories for industrial visit. So work there, and then you get insight, then you learn from your seniors, then you also get some sort of an insight from industry people that uh, working is fine, but probably this is the time where you can gain more knowledge. Later on, it will become more and more difficult. So then I decided to go back to college and study. So when I did my post graduation in pharmacology, the intent was actually I always wanted to be teacher. I still want to be a teacher, but not yet reached there. Maybe someday I would. So pharmacology was one of the subject in our stream where you enjoy teaching actually, and
True.
there is a lot of scope because it's basically core science of medicine. So I decided to study post graduation in pharmacology. But then at that particular time only, when I was coming out of college, the entire Indian pharmaceutical industry was getting a kind of getting entry into the clinical research domain, and
Okay.
then it kind of boomed in next few years or probably a decade. So
True.
fortunate enough to work in that area. And then during the course of that time only, I was also able to get into college and did my MBA in strategy
That's
from.
wonderful. I like how you describe the journey of pharma in India as well, and how it went by you. And you were always, you knew always what you wanted to do, and such is why you went to, the manufacturing unit, the factory side of it, to understand the entire collaterals of making medicines, which is great because, as you said rightly, out of the 60 folks, only two of you chose the domain to understand the other end of medicine, which indeed not many those days knew about medicine. So that's a very good insight that you're giving us right now. I'm gonna talk more about the medicines bit of it in later part of the conversation. But right now, I want to talk about uh, the evolution in your career. The 2 years instinct at the manufacturing unit in Ghaziabad, to then trying to finish other things, and then coming back to again working. And till date, how has the journey been from?
So it's something which was never planned the way I have been progressing in industry. Uh, I do plan some sort of a short-term goals. I do. I mean, it's something like at one fine day you realize that okay, oh, this is something that you want to do, or this is something that you don't want to do. I mean, which has actually resulted in the way that I had progressed. And then there are some environmental factor also which has resulted in the way that I have moved in industry. But if one look at my professional journey, it is not a very normal journey, and I would not recommend somebody to venture so many areas. So I've gone from manufacturing to core R&D setup, then I've gone into the clinical research, and then within clinical research there is something that you do at the hospital sites or doing the core clinical at the hospital site. Then you do a data management and data analytics at the back end of the
Wow.
research spectrum. Then you move from there to the IT companies, doing the service management of for the life sciences client, and then you move into the consulting side of the IT business to finally landing into a hospital, and within hospital also doing multi roles. So initially the role was more to do the strategy planning and doing some sort of a process optimization for the hospital. Then later on venturing into the IT management of the organization. So it's a roller coaster journey.
Right.
A lot of challenges being associated, and I would be very honest in admitting that whatever I have done is not something that everything that I would say I enjoy. But at the same time, it's a realistic world that when you get into an organization, you have to do something which you really enjoy, but at the same time, you have to do something which is in the interest of organization and even within your career also. So enjoying this stint, I've been in this hospital for last more than 5 years now, and this is probably the longest and the most satisfying uh, stint within my professional journey of last 22, 23 years.
That's so wonderful. And the attributes of understanding that you have played a multi-role in your career from one to another, another to another. The most likable subject of mine was the clinical research. I wish I had time to do a whole episode on the clinical research part, because even that one subject and what you did there is very interesting for a mass to understand how it really takes place. So I'm gonna skip to that thought of mine and jump onto the next one. Studying, learning yourself, learning so much from people, coming across people. Did you ever have a role model or somebody who you inspired to learn from, not to be, but to learn from?
There are many actually. It would be wrong to say that I have been fascinated by an individual or maybe one or two individual. I mean, the life is a continuous journey, and so is the space of learning and getting inspired from. So obviously, during your childhood, you have maximum exposure of your parents, and most probably you would be inspired by one of them because you learn maximum from them. So obviously, in my initial life until now, I have always been admiring my mother for some of the humane qualities. Very approachable, very humble, somebody whom I always look towards in terms of working with adversities, working within constraints. Now, in terms of the professional domain, there are few people whom I have worked directly with who
Okay.
inspire me. So, for example, in Dabur Pharma, I used to work very closely with a scientist called Dr. Rama Mukherjee. I mean, she always used to inspire me by her approach towards doing something good for cancer patients. I mean, her single point in every meeting, she used to say that do whatever you do, but think of a cancer patient, that how you're able to improve the overall quality of life. So, I mean, her single message was don't worry too much about the outcome of your work, but just think that even if your endeavor is able to bring a smile on face of a cancer patient or a family, then you have done your bit. So I mean,
Right.
you always used to admire her. Our current organization chairman, Dr. Farzan, um, similar philosophy. I mean, he has opened up this hospital with a single agenda of bringing the world class cancer care to India, uh,
Right.
without even compromising on any of the standards, and then ensuring that everything is delivered which is being planned. I mean, a patient will not get anything which is not required to be done for him. So these are two people whom I have touched in my professional life. But then there are few of other individuals from the public domain which really inspired me. I mean, so there is a even though I had not seen physically, but I have read and so much about the Vinoba Bhave. I mean, that man inspired me always. I mean, single-handedly, he was able to inspire millions of people to give back to society. I mean, this is something unimaginable. I mean, we all have heard about Gandhi, obviously a great man,
True.
but Vinoba Bhave, I really admire that guy. And the other one from my industry, I specifically admire the founder of Cipla, Dr. Yusuf Hamid. Uh, by his sheer commitment, dedication, he has been able to transform the entire AIDS, HIV, and TB treatment and reduce the cost of treatment for nations, entire continent of Africa, and most of the Asian nations
True.
also. Unimaginable, reducing the cost of treatment from thousands of dollars to probably less than $100.
Right.
These are the kind of people who inspire you.
That's so wonderful to hear. And what the connection that I find among all the people is they all gave value to an individual's life and made sure that things become little more, if the right term is cheaper for treatment in order to bring in about a life and grow life more. Because you spoke about reducing the cost of treatment, and because you have a domain of cancer currently, this was. A popular video that went viral some time back where I will not name the company, but the CEO of the company spoke out loud in US saying that, uh, the treatment of cancer that they have invented was not for the Indians. It was meant for the West. I see. You know who I'm
Yeah.
talking about. So when you heard this, when the Indian law said, what, we will not cost more than this. What was your take on this man's big statement about Indians and that it's meant for the West?
No, it was really in a bad taste. I say, being a CEO of an organization, I could have understand his constraint in terms of investing towards uh, getting a drug out of discovery or a development. And trust me, I have been part of a drug development industry, so I do understand the constraint in which typically industry works in. I mean, you have to recover cost. For every drug which comes out into market, there are 10,000 more drug molecules which are failures, and somebody has to recover a cost of all the failures and the time and money invested on that.
True.
So in that sense, I mean, anybody who is from the industry background would understand that you can't expect an industry to run on philanthropy. But at the same time, uh, the, the the comment was in really bad taste. And then there are means of recovering the cost. So there are ways that organizations can work with the governments out there. There are a lot of non-profits which come out. There are a lot of foundations which can work out. So organizations do work with them and try and recover their cost. And it's not that everything needs to be recovered
Just
in a
about
month or a year out there. So there are ways that could have been done. So felt really bad. Now coming back to the point that you made, I mean, see the cost of treatment. I think one thing which we all really need to understand, this entire mindset about cheap, which is being tagged to the Indian kind of so-called innovation or Indian mindset that we want everything cheap. I think
right.
the value of particular thing is more important. And the second, especially in healthcare, what is more important is, are you getting the right treatment? Because you end up spending so much, but on a wrong treatment or a wrong probably diagnosis. And at the end of the day, what you require to do the so-called right way was not done in your treatment. So in our hospital, we have a philosophy. I mean, we stick to that we will treat a patient or treat cancer the right way.
True.
Now, for us, the right way is something which is right for patient. I mean, for us, we are very proud of our patient-centric approach when we say that whatever the decision would be taken in the interest of the patient, keeping ourselves in that same shoe, that okay, what we would have felt should have been done. Now, if that requires a cost also, we would work very closely with the so-called patient and the family and try and explain to them. Unfortunately, a private hospital has its own limitations and considerations. So
True.
you can't give free, but you can find out a way of supporting patients. So that's what we do.
That's a big thing that you should understand about how to reduce cost in your treatment. And if you know the way, you know the person and you know the brand in terms of reach out. You spoke about this now, because we have this conversation. Before I go on to the very last segment of the conversation, there's a very interesting one that I come across. I'm sure most of the youth and millennials also will connect to this thought right now. Is the treatment of cancer by the means of a CBD oil. Now, how true? I have come across people who have been out of this, who are 60 plus and stuff, and I know personally who they are. But what is your take on it?
Amit, and I would be very honest in kind of saying, unfortunately, I haven't found a scientific rationale or a scientific supporting document where I could very candidly say to you that no, this is well proven. I mean, I've heard, I've read about it, but unfortunately, I would not be able to endorse the outcome. I mean, people within my own families, I've seen kind of vouching about this particular thing, but probably I'm not in a better condition or in a proper condition to endorse. I have not found a very solid scientific rationale to support this.
Absolutely. And with that, we'll leave you back to your thought as well. Last sort of segment right now. We're going to talk about your hobbies. So, what do you like in quick terms? What are your likes when you wake up in the morning? What do you like to do?
So as I mentioned to you, since childhood, I am a newspaper buff. So if there is no newspaper on that day, I get jittery. I mean, now fortunately you have phones, you have Google News, you have all sort of apps where you can read. But still, I prefer to have a newspaper in hand. So that's my probably the best hobby till date. Hopefully, should be there till I live. Then I love talking to like-minded people. I mean, I'm not somebody who enjoy a big bunch of or a group of people, but I do tend to enjoy talking to friends over tea. I mean, I'm a big tea buff, so I talk to them more on a personal front. I'm somebody who is more a people friendly person, so I tend to engage in conversation related to their personal life. Then obviously a doting father of a 5-year-old girl. So I
No
mean, just
wonder.
the sight of your girl will let you spend time with her, whatever little time I can spend. I mean, we work in a healthcare segment, so fortunately, a lot of time is spent in the hospital. But whatever time I get, I definitely prefer to spend some time with her.
That's wonderful to hear from you. And about you, Mr. Amit, just about last question. You love tea. You say you're a teetotaler. So, how did you like a cutting chai?
Perfect. I mean, as you very rightly pointed at the start of this thing, that this conversation would be way different the way you have interacted with any of the other things. So you lived to your promise. I mean, it has definitely at the back of the mind kind of reminded me of some of those best times of my school and college time. It definitely has brought a smile on the face. So I would say 10 out of 10 for your chat.
मेरठ की यादें आपको आ गई होंगी नहीं सर?
Yeah.
Chaliye, joining us now in the conversation with the Common Connect right now, I'm going to welcome someone very special again from client side. Please welcome the head of enterprise segment, Lenovo India, Mr. Aditya Agarwal with us right now. And he in conversation with Mr. Amit Sharma. Aditya, hi, welcome to Cutting Chai Stories. I'm sure you enjoyed the conversation that Mr. Amit had about his life.
Yes, I did. And the whole thing that he's doing is so inspiring, as well as the people that he talked about, those who have inspired him. I think they are role models for a lot of us.
True. True. So very quickly before I leave this thread and leave the two of you to continue ahead in conversation, it's a very a simple question, and I would expect a simple answer, straightforward answer in a short one. Let's start with Amit first. Amit, what are the challenges faced by the industry in the 21? And I'm sure there were so many challenges, but is there any innovation that we see, and how do we get prepared for the coming years?
So you mean to say the last year that went by?
Absolutely.
I mean, we all know, I mean, in a very simple word, COVID itself was a challenge that everyone faced. But the outcome of that particular scenario, so at least a couple of very pertinent challenges that we faced, at least in healthcare and maybe most of the other organizations. One was terrible uncertainty. I mean, unfortunately, nobody had an answer that what is happening next. So when we talk of so much of planning, so much of kind of resource planning, um, and some of the other stuff that you need to work towards. Unfortunately, I mean this entire year was entire year of uncertainty. So we were not able to plan. Secondly, for somebody like in healthcare, uh, this was definitely, I would say, within 1 year, in the COVID time frame, we kind of leaped almost a decade in terms of the change in technology or change in the operating sphere that we were working on. I mean, we always talk in our hospital meetings out there that COVID had forced so much of changes in the way healthcare and a hospital operate, which was not at all possible in a normal landscape. I mean,
True, true.
we have seen so much of change. So definitely, technology leaps and bounds was the other highlight of 2021 that I would say.
Thank you, Amit. Aditya, your take on the same, the challenges faced by the industry and the lookout in the coming years.
Yep. So, uncertainty, like Amit said, I think that's the key word right now because, and that continues in 2022 also, right? That, yesterday, I mean, a few years ago, we could predict a lot of things, but today we can't, right? And we simply don't know when are things ending, when are things starting, right? So that uncertainty in the workplace, people don't know when are they going back to office, how long are they supposed to continue from home. So that is one key defining part that I see. Now, in terms of other challenges, the IT challenges, early, and I'm speaking more from an IT perspective also. And the IT challenges have remained quite similar. Security we see are still challenges, and people. How do we this whole challenge is now more kind of societal also that people knew how to work in office. They've adjusted to working from home, but now it's kind of a work from any place kind of scenario right now. And how do we keep people productive? How do we keep them safe? How do we ensure that their mental health is also accounted for? I think that's one big challenge. Of course, industries, demand, supply. I'm leaving that point out because there is also an uncertainty over there. But just in terms of IT and people working, I think these are some big challenges that we need to grapple with.
Absolutely, and I think this only way forward is to bring in the innovation. So, with that thought and a very interesting conversation with Amit Sharma, I thank you for being in conversation with me.